Hi everyone, Dr. Brad here. I wanted to address some of the symptoms I've been hearing people talk about lately, and I want to provide some context. A number of people have been telling me about how they've been feeling dizzy, lightheaded, unable to focus, and even short of breath these past few weeks. With this pandemic brewing, some of the people I'm talking to immediately fret that they have COVID. Others frantically wonder what's wrong with them, fearing that they are developing an anxiety disorder. Now, chalking this all up to stress is at once simplistic and maybe also more accurate than people might imagine. So I want to take a moment to offer an explanation for some of these symptoms with the sole purpose of normalizing the experience. First of all, let me set the stage. It begins with the nervous system's sense of safety. Let me explain. I use the term safety very broadly. While at the most fundamental level, safety involves threat to our life, our very existence. And yes, this is something this pandemic is making every one of us recognize. But more broadly, safety involves anything that poses a threat to our sense of identity, value, and worth. Think about what that means. If you believe your immune system can handle an assault from the coronavirus, an idea that I would like everyone personally to challenge and exercise with caution. Almost everyone I know has been touched by the socio-cultural, economic, political ramifications that have ensued as this virus has swept the globe. People are physically isolated and alone. Unemployment has skyrocketed. Schools and businesses have shut down indefinitely. Daily practices and routines have been squashed or uprooted. In other words, how we think of ourselves and our lives, what we prize and value as a meaningful life, all of that is now under tumult. So with that said, how safe do you feel right now? Now, this next part involves the nervous system. What do we do as mammals when we feel unsafe? Now take a moment and drop inside, really. What do you do? Or a better way of phrasing it might be, what do you notice your physical body and your mind doing when you feel unsafe? As most of us remember from high school biology, when we feel unsafe, we mobilize. We activate our sympathetic nervous system to either fight that threat or run from it like mad. Mentally, our minds race, trying to calculate how we can get out of whatever dangerous situation we find ourselves in. And remember, anything that threatens our safety, our identity, is dangerous. And this is not about logic, because if it were about logic, every single person I know would behave differently in at least some part of their lives. So when we are activated, mobilized, what happens? Well, our heart beats faster with more force, our muscles tighten or brace, certain blood vessels constrict as our blood pressure rises, we sweat more, our minds race, which prevents us from sleeping, our vision sharpens, and we breathe more. And that last piece may be the key factor in dizziness, lightheadedness, and shortness of breath. Have you ever seen someone suffering from a panic attack? They usually are bending over, gasping for air, breathing rapidly, breathing deeply and erratically. And they say things like, I can't catch my breath, or I need more oxygen. However, that last statement, needing more oxygen, is not exactly true. During a panic attack, we tend to overbreathe, breathing in too much oxygen and or exhaling too much carbon dioxide. And when there is too much oxygen in the lungs and the bloodstream, our red blood cells, our hemoglobin, the part that transports oxygen to the tissues, holds onto it more tightly, so it never gets delivered to the tissues that are in dire need of it. Ironically, then, the more oxygen we inhale, the less oxygen is available to the tissues. And this causes the body to increase our breathing rate and volume in hopes of getting more and more oxygen. So back to that person having the panic attack. What is the well-known remedy to help people settle down when they're having a panic attack? Breathing into a paper bag. Whether they realize it or not, what they are doing is recycling their air and increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in their system. And as their blood levels of oxygen decrease and their levels of carbon dioxide rise, the heart doesn't need to beat as fast or as forcibly to get the oxygen to the tissues. The blood vessels then can open and relax, blood pressure can drop, and cerebral blood flow can increase to areas of the brain, allowing us to be less reactive, more introspective, and clearer focused. You might say, but I'm not hyperventilating, although I do get lightheaded and dizzy. What I described was acute hyperventilation, not chronic hyperventilation, which I believe most of us are experiencing these days. Whereas acute hyperventilation is rapid and large volumes of air being sucked in and blown out, chronic hyperventilation looks something like this. Big inhales and holding it, maybe even up to 30 seconds. Frequent yawning, lots of sighing, catching yourself taking in huge breaths of air. Doubt that you chronically hyperventilate? Researcher Linda Stone coined the term email apnea, describing the phenomenon of holding your breath while reading emails. In my experience with hundreds of biofeedback patients, I have seen time and time again, and I've noticed in myself as well, that anytime a person pulls out their cell phone, scrolls through their email or social media or news feed, they alter their breathing, and not in a functional way. This, of course, raises a few questions. One, how do you breathe when you are on your cell phone or computer? And are you spending more time on your phone and computer right now? I find that many people feeling fear during this pandemic find themselves either searching social media and their news feeds, desperate to find out more and more, clinging to that notion that more, and the more I know, the more I can control, which, by the way, I hope you know is not true. The more we mobilize, the more our muscles brace, readying for an assault. That prevents us from breathing easily. And that's another piece to this, that the more we are on our cell phones and computers, the more we compromise our posture. And that makes breathing very difficult. When we are hunched over and our heads and necks are forward, our breath cannot freely flow easily. And we tend to breathe in our upper chest and less in our abdomen or belly. So this is just one piece to the lightheaded and dizzy puzzle, mobilizing when we overbreathe. Conversely, mobilization is not the only neurobiological response to feeling unsafe. By way of an example, think about reptiles or possums. When these creatures confront a predator, instead of fighting or fleeing, they freeze, or what we call immobilize. This is not a sympathetic nervous system response, but rather the action of an archaic reptilian parasympathetic system. Now, our body desperately wants to conserve energy and resources, so it does so by shutting down and feigning death, which makes us less attractive to predators who prefer to kill their prey. So what happens to the body and to the mind when we immobilize? Well, our heart rate and our blood pressure drops, our digestion stops, our mind goes blank, and our ability to focus completely disappears, and our breathing slows down. In other words, the body does the exact opposite of the mobilization response. Typically, this nervous system response happens when it becomes overwhelmed and assesses that it is no longer capable of fighting or fleeing. Again, this is not a rational or logical thing. It is the same reaction that happens when someone passes out from seeing a needle when they're having their blood drawn. But the reaction doesn't have to be as severe as blacking out. Simply becoming lightheaded, dizzy, or being unable to focus and concentrate could be enough of an indication that your nervous system is overwhelmed and wants to shut down. So what I've outlined here is that a sense of lightheadedness, dizziness, and feeling like you're going to pass out might be the result of 1, overbreathing, breathing more rapidly, more deeply, more erratically, excessively sighing and yawning, or even taking huge gulps of air and holding your breath. Or it could be immobilizing. Your nervous system feels overwhelmed and incapable of functioning, so it starts to shut down. What do you do when you feel this way? The moments when you are feeling this way, take a pause. For many of us, the moment we experience these uncomfortable sensations, our mind is off to the races thinking about all the possible causes and treatments and outcomes and things we can do. Or we completely blank out. So pause. Allow yourself to show up as fully as possible in this moment. Now you might be asking, if my mind is racing or if it goes blank, how the hell do I even show up fully? One simple technique is to bring your attention as fully as possible to some physical sensation, something that is less threatening or perhaps even pleasant. A common one is touch. Carrying some object with you at times when you feel these experiences, and you can put this object in your hand and focus solely on that. If you don't have an object, grab some of your clothing between your fingers and feel it with a singular intention of feeling it. That's it, just feel it. Notice the texture, the sensation that arises in your fingers. Is it soft? Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it rough? Play with this. When we do this, we activate a different branch of our parasympathetic nervous system that cultivates a sense of engagement with others and the world in a sense of safety. This practice can help us settle, deactivate both mobilization and immobilization processes, and allow our breathing to regulate. And of course, you can do this with any physical sensation. It doesn't have to be touch. It could be smell, taste, sight, or sound. Simply focus on one sensation and try to describe it as objectively as possible. The next step is to practice compassion and kindness. Whenever we are triggered and feel unsafe, it does not serve us in any way to criticize or judge ourselves. Rather than chastise yourself for saying, "Damn it, I know better. Why am I reacting this way?" Pause. Locate those sensations in the body and fully bring your attention to them. And then with all the kindness and care you would offer a good friend or a young child, say to yourself, of course I'm feeling this way. Of course I'm reacting this way. My nervous system doesn't feel safe right now. And with everything that's going on, that is understandable. While there are many more techniques and practices for compassion, kindness, and self-regulation, this is a starting place. Now, thank you for watching this video, and I hope it provided some insights as to why you might be feeling this way, why you might be feeling lightheaded, dizzy, why you might be feeling the way you do in these challenging times. My hope is that understanding these potentials, you won't be as scared, nervous, and you won't react to the sensations themselves. As always, may you go gently, knowing your goodness.